Everyone has the social relationships that they personally treasure. The ones where we create cherished memories together and overcome troubles together. And then there are the relationships that we despise. The ones that cause us pain, guilt, and bring the worst out of us. As an excessively outgoing social butterfly, it's inevitable that I've gone through a countless amount of experiences, good and bad, through social relationships, even at my age. But the issue was that I let my social relationships define me and who I was. I always had to act a certain way in front of every single person in order to feel validated. Everyone's opinion mattered to me so much. The way I acted hanging out with one group was always completely different from the way I hung out with another. And the different judgments and perceptions of me had affected me negatively. So naturally, I seek for a solution to deal with the anxiety, which I had from dealing with all the negative energy. But that was when I realized I had no redemptive social connections. I distanced myself from my family and found reassurance within my social groups. But I was too nearsighted. Upon realizing these flaws, I wish that my family was closer with me. I wish I spent more time with my family. When did the relationship start to crumble? How did the relationships become unhealthy and corrupted? At one point, these questions became repetitive. Instead of finding possible answers to my inquiries, I allowed these issues to overwhelm me, causing me to regret every little action I made, fearing that I had made another mistake. If only circumstances weren't so harsh, so that I had to turn to my social connections for approval when I couldn't find it at home. My means for connecting with the people around me was a method of distraction, so that I could set my mind elsewhere and act differently. Now, everyone has a mask that they put on depending on who they're interacting with, right? Whether it's being informal with your boss or goofy with your friends, because we assume that it's appropriate for the environment of the interaction. Moreover, it's the safe way of meeting expectations in an environment where you're expected to express yourself in a certain way. In my case, at church, some people thought I was a little angel. I don't know what that was about, but maybe it was because I was young. But the moment that the adults were out of an equation, I would be laughing at and making the worst stupid immature jokes. In the eyes of my peers, I was that one kid who had an obligation for attention. That one kid who would be annoyingly weird all the time for no reason, but on purpose. Upon realizing this, or before I realized it, this had become one of my prevalent identities. The identity where I would annoy people for fun, for attention, try to connect with them a little bit, but then annoy them some more. Socializing was my coping mechanism. I would even connect with people online all the time. And I would get to know a little bit about them and their lifestyle. And right now you may be like, whoa, strangers online? Because the truth is, nobody would trust anyone if they didn't know them in any way, shape, or form. And obviously, I was the same. I drew a border that limited me from telling others about myself. While behind the screen, I'm protected from the other person, while we're still able to influence and interact with each other. But what I didn't take into account was the severity of having an exposure to a vast connection of people. People with personal issues in their life. So while all my peers were playing soccer and learning how to draw, I spent my time listening to people complain about their private lives, their philosophical beliefs, and their controversial beliefs. And their knowledge made me develop an insecure image of myself, my ideals, and my beliefs. And one of the biggest aspects of me that was influenced was my language, the art of verbal communication. I remember picking up a lot of explicit terms when I was younger, like when I was 7, and I would just randomly be throwing them around for attention. So yeah, I was that kid who your parents said to stay away from. And in turn, I was also taught some terms and phrases, such as there was actually a name for people like me. Like, oh, I'm so special. An attention whore. I mean, they weren't wrong, but fortunately, I had the chance to change this label upon hearing that I was transferring schools. I thought to myself, I have a clean slate. I want to be better this time. I want to be different. I want to be more helpful. And I want to encourage the people around me for the better as well. Is what I wrote in my application to the school. And it's also what the principal brought up every single time I had gotten myself into trouble. In my first 2 months at my new school, I had already been in trouble on multiple occasions for using explicit language. Like, seriously, I was 10. I should have been kicking balls and playing with Pokemon cards at that time. But essentially what was happening was the negative influences in my life had caused me to influence my environment negatively. And sometimes these negative influences were defining at some point, completely outshadowing the fact that there were positive influences around in my environment. And as time passed, it became more clear that every simple little action can be significantly influential. The way we relate and interact with other human beings allows us to develop alongside the unique experiences of every unique individual. Aside from the facts that tells us healthy relationships prolongs life and help us live happier lives in general, there's also the fact that humans thrive through social connections. And Harvard researchers found out that attention and interaction given to a baby is crucial for the brain's architecture, development of the brain's architecture, meaning that we as humans are biologically programmed for interaction. Isn't that great? And furthermore, there's also the fact that society is literally a construct of millions of human connections. So now that we know the significance of social connections and social influences, how can we define a healthy social connection? Through an ideal and encouraging approach. So I want to share with you all an analogy where building a relationship is just like scuba diving. So on the surface, when you first approach someone, how do you introduce yourself? What is the impression that you leave off? Or in another case, where you're the one who's being introduced or approached, what is the deciding factor for you to acquaint yourself with the other person? In my case, I just went and shop until they left. But in the fortunate scenario that both you and the other person like each other, that is because of a mutual agreement through a connection which allows understanding. The environment becomes more comfortable for more personal interactions, but this requires awareness from both sides. Are your comments or questions insensitive or careless? Because then they might come out as passive aggression. And the key factor here is attitude. Do you really have the intention to acknowledge and recognize someone for their individuality? Because the harsh truth is a lot of people require a good reason to interact with another person and build a relationship. I mean, I believe that is justified. Because nobody wants to waste their time building a relationship with someone who's judged as inadequate or untrustworthy. So, as interactions become more repetitive and you're used to the circumstances, here's a question from the audience. Which of you have been in social relationships where you aren't sure are healthy or unhealthy? Or maybe you're in one like that right now. Nobody? Okay, I see one hand. Nice. When a natural relationship is established, that is because you build your relationship through a mutual trust and understanding. So you're conforming based on your most relevant influences. And it would be more accurate to say that you are built together instead of being fit together, where you're forcing yourself to be there, to fit. And hoping that a relationship is not one-sided, that means that you are contributing in a healthy way to the relationship as well as the other person. Don't get the wrong idea. I'm not telling anyone to buy their friend a $10 Starbucks gift card But I am telling you to buy your friend at least $20. Like, come on, what can you buy with $10, right? So, summatively, communicating mutual values is key in mutual agreement. And the real challenge is maintaining a healthy consistency. After a fight, would you distance yourself? Would your connection be that shallow for you to distance yourself and be upset at the other person and cut your relationship? Or would you maintain the relationship and try to reinforce it? And let me let you guys in on a little secret. So when you have a fight, it's usually over disagreement, right? And when you disagree with someone, it's because you're standing for your point, which you believe as true. And by revealing the lengths that you go to stand for a point which you believe in as true, reveals vulnerability because you are being honest with yourself and the other person so they can understand who you are. In other words, it's communication at a deeper level. When you are vulnerable, you're allowing change. Instead of being invulnerable, where you're limiting what's coming in, what's coming out, you're allowing development through trust. And I understand that everybody has trust issues. Okay, nobody wants to tell anyone about themselves for no reason or risk them knowing who they really are on the inside. But that leads us back to the beginning. When you first connect with someone, that is because of mutual interest, right? Then you build that interest, allowing more trust and understanding. So, to be honest, I never wanted to build a relationship with anybody. I was just floating around the surface, chilling with my guava juice and my tooth. And I just wanted to get a nice suntan. But instead, I was left with a sunburn. I never knew about the beautiful scenery at the bottom of the ocean. I didn't know how to swim. And I didn't want to risk learning because I didn't know anything about it. I just wanted to feel appreciated at the top. But that view was obviously flawed because everyone has inner intentions as well. So what changed me to seek for the bottom, where you might be left with a cedar entrance brick or a clam? I had two friends, fortunately, who changed my way of thinking. The first one is named Michael. Through his consistent connection and trust in me, and when he was vulnerable around me, that allowed me to develop through his trust. And furthermore, I had my second friend was someone with a strong sense of identity. And through that consistent connection, I was able to be influenced by his strong sense of identity. But earlier, I also mentioned that nobody wants to waste their time building a relationship that they judge to be pointless. So what's the deciding factor for us to acquaint ourselves with others? Judging with a mold limits our perceptions and perceptions of the vastness of the universe. Because humans are too unique in every single way to be limited by a mold. So what if I could introduce a container that fits all shapes regardless, because everyone is different. Especially in a time where we have multiple protests in defense to a group of people, how great would it be if everyone could just be appreciated and not judged when you don't even know who they are on the bottom and the inside? And if that still isn't enough to encourage you all, even the molds can fit in the container. Thank you.